he's like the most recent like project he's worked on, so it's fresh in his mind and it's what he loves. So yeah, so we're going to be learning a lot. So this term at Academy Spinners in Sydney, we're teaching winning pitch. So it's how do you pitch? How do you convince people? And pitching is not just pitching to investors. It's having a conversation with customers, negotiating maybe with our suppliers. It's just literally connecting and getting our message across effectively. So Annalise and I were like, okay, how can we make this event as cool as possible for a unique open day? And we're like, okay, let's invite Lucas to talk about pitching, but let's learn how to pitch with the confidence of a TED presenter. Because I don't know about you guys, but TED has been a huge inspiration for me for over a decade. It's where we all learned so much, but every time we see someone presenting at TED, you're like, I want to learn how to present like that. And Lucas this year, luckily, was one of the mentors and ambassadors for TED that helped the incredible TED presenters this year pitch. So yes, so we're going to be learning from the best of the best. So Lucas, how has been your experience of running TED?
It's been crazy. It's been crazy. It was wicked, but it was amazing. Unique opportunity to work with some brilliant minds, that's for sure. And incredibly interesting for me because I was lucky enough to teach them or to mentor them on their pitching skills, but at the same time I was getting a lot of content from them because there's a lot of industries that I have no idea. I had the chance to mentor a professional in everything that's got to do with environmental metrics and changing consumer behavior when it comes to kind of caring for the environment. Then a guy that's starting a startup on cultured meat, that it's meat that's made on a laboratory. Then a doctor that has 35 years of experience on understanding how climate change is affecting our bodies. So it's been fantastic. I think I've learned way more than I actually thought. But don't tell that to anyone. But that was my great takeaway from the event for sure.
And what would you say is the biggest mistake people make? Because I think like everybody's a diamond born to shine with so much potential, but when it comes out to like the way that they communicate, a lot of people struggle. I mean, more people are scared of presenting in public than death, which is
absolutely.
So what is the most common mistake that entrepreneurs make when they are communicating the business, when they are pitching, whether it's the elevator pitch or to an investor or to the first customer? What is the most common mistake you see people making?
I don't want to give away the whole event from today, but since you're asking,
the end to get the answer.
Yes, stay till the end. But basically, today I'm going to give you kind of 6 very important tips and tricks to get prepared to present with a huge load of confidence. But I would definitely say that the biggest mistake is not understanding who the audience is and not understanding what the audience kind of takes away. So I have you'll see in my presentation today, I have a few slides that says key takeaway. So stay tuned for those. Those are, if I could ask you guys to take a few things home from today, they're those. And then I have one slide, which is if you only have enough kind of memory in your head for one thing, I'll also kind of point at that one. But tag along, 6:04. I think we're more than ready. I have a lot of content, and I'm expecting a lot of questions as well. Whoever's not here, I'm sorry for them. They'll get to kind of join whenever they want to join. But without further ado,
and hello, Chiara.
Hello, Chiara.
In our final competition, good to see you.
Yeah, and hello, Alex, as well. I can see Alex here. How are you, Alex? Sweetie. Oh, all right. So I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna switch off my camera and microphone, and I'll let Lucas shine his light and expertise on you guys.
I'll give it my best. I promise. All right, guys. So good afternoon to everyone. Let me see if I can put all your faces here. Yep, perfect. Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Open Day. What's Open Day? Open Day for Academy of Entrepreneurs is basically an event that we run, kind of giving a little bit of a sneak peek of the next unit and topics that we're going to be teaching on our next term that's starting next week. And this time it's going to be winning pitch, and therefore it deserves to have an incredible open day talking about how to present with the confidence of a TEDx speaker. So for those of you that are late, I was lucky enough to be the main coach for TEDxDarlinghurst this year. It was an incredible experience, and it also gave me a lot of new tools to understand how to engage from a different perspective. So, okay, a little bit of housekeeping. Please remember to mute yourselves. If I'm not wrong, I've muted everyone, and everyone that joins is going to be muted. If you really want to interrupt me because you think that it's worth it, go ahead, do so. I'm more than happy to have people just jumping and saying, "Hey, Lucas, yeah," or "No, that's wrong." But please come forward, and if not, please put your questions in the chat. Whippy, I can see you're here. If you can read those questions, and again, if you want to interrupt me or whatever, I'm happy to do so. Connect with us, please. You can use the hashtags Boss Your Future and Storytelling in Instagram or in Twitter. Connect with us at the Academy of Entrepreneurs in Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Feel free to also connect with me in LinkedIn if you want. It's always a pleasure to grow my community and also help others grow theirs. As entrepreneurs, one of the most important things is for us to create a huge community. So go ahead and do so. And now let's begin. So as you see here, bottom right corner, key takeaway. This is what I was talking for. And this is a very, very important thing and a huge mistake that I see speakers do every single time, especially in TED. This is something that I realized quite a bit in this experience, and it's understanding or thinking what's in it for them. In this case, what's in it for you? When I'm creating any sort of content for my classes, for my mentees, or for anyone, what I'm thinking is, okay, I think this is interesting, but what's in it for them? What are they taking home? What does my audience need and want? What do I want them to take home after this finishes? So the first takeaway, straight up, as we start this workshop or this this kind of Zoom conference or webinar, is try to ask yourself every time that you're building something, what's in it for them? What is in for my audience? What are they taking home? Not what's fun for me, not what's great for me. And this goes specially targeted to those who are professionals or specialists on a very specific topic. If you're a neuroscientist and you're talking to an audience that not everyone there is a doctor, or the vast majority are not doctors, you need to understand and need to be able to put yourself in their shoes and understand with what eyes is the other person kind of looking at me? What are they listening to? Something that might be very boring for me because I've done it thousands of times might be extremely insightful for other people. One of the things that I say a lot is one doesn't really know how much they know until somebody else asks you, did you know? And it's this concept of we give a lot of things for granted, that people know the same or as many things as we know on different topics, and it's not always that way. So make sure that you understand who's on the other side, but we'll go to that in a second. So the world today, nothing new, but extraordinary content and everywhere, multiple distractions always. Probably now, guys, you are listening to me and at the same time you're playing with your phones, or there's someone next to you distracting you, or maybe you have a TV turned on. Turn that off. But that's generating distractions, and that also requires for us to be better at communicating. Sensible and demanding audiences. As time goes by, people are getting more and more demanding on what they want to consume and how they want to consume it. If we kind of rewind, I don't know, 100 years, people would stay in the Globe Theater. That was like 300 years ago when Shakespeare, I don't know when exactly was that time, but they would stay for 8, 12, 14 hours kind of sitting or maybe standing, looking at different plays. Today, nobody's willing to do that. So audiences are getting more demanding on what sort of content they're willing and able to digest and to take on. And obviously, a very, very, very short span of attention. So we need to capitalize that, or we need to understand how do we, from our kind of humble side, tackle these things, and how can we earn the attention of our audience? Because that's the verb. We need to earn the attention of the audience. How do we do it? Simple, and that's through storytelling. So today's workshop is all going to be around storytelling and understanding how to use storytelling to build up your own confidence when presenting, but most importantly, to capture your audience, to make sure that your message goes through you or from you and into the audience that is on the other side. So what is storytelling? It's a very kind of trendy word. Everyone's talking about storytelling, startups. There are these super hip words that everyone wants to use, but storytelling is something that's been along and around for centuries. And it's the process of using facts and compelling narrative. And I always like to say, always a little bit of fantasy in the middle as well, to communicate with an audience in a very engaging way. Okay, so once again, it's the process of using facts and a compelling narrative. Highlight the word compelling there. Again, a little bit of fantasy. Sometimes it's always useful to communicate with an audience in an engaging way. So why do we tell stories? For many reasons, but here are the three big and the most interesting ones, which is to sell something. If we are if we own a product or a service and we want to expand it, or we want to try and push it, we need to tell stories to sell our products. Who are the masters of this? Apple. They always find a way to talk to you in a way where maybe you're not really interested in the product, but the way that they talk about their products and the way that they tell the stories these products kind of creates really try or make you want to buy the product. I always like talking about Coca-Cola here as well, because if I ask you, what's the story that Coca-Cola tells on every single ad that they have? And I'm going to take a chance here, and I'm going to ask a question to someone or anyone that might have their camera on, which is no one except you, Weepy. Weepy, I can see your camera on. What does Coca-Cola sell as a story? Every single ad.
Oh, other people have their cameras on. This is interesting.
Oh yeah, but now it's you. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I always tend to think of the Christmas adverts when it comes to Coca-Cola. So the idea of happiness, like getting together, community, social.
That is the story that they tell. They tell this idea that whenever you open a Coca-Cola, you're going to be surrounded by your loved ones. You're going to be surrounded by the people that love you, and you're going to have an incredible time. So they don't sell the product because the product itself is rubbish. I'm sorry if there's any Coca-Cola fans here, but the product itself is rubbish. But it's the experience that surrounds that product. We tell stories to entertain, and that's what we do to our little children when they're born. We tell them stories for them to go to sleep, or finally to educate, and that is kind of mostly the purpose of me as an educator and any TEDx speaker when they're doing their talks. The idea is to educate on a certain topic or to kind of build up awareness. So why is storytelling important? And again, we are kind of reaching the place where I'm going to talk about these 6 very interesting tips on how to build storytelling. But why is it important? It's because stories are way more compelling than businesses. Again, go to Coca-Cola. It's way more interesting to talk about your family and love and Christmas and getting together and having a great time than talking about the product itself, because the product itself has nothing. It's what we believe that product is and what we believe that product creates whenever we open that bottle. And because people relate emotionally with stories and therefore remember them more. I don't want to give this one away because I have a few examples later on, but there are hundreds of ads and there are hundreds of examples of people starting with the idea of how a product or a service has changed their lives. And they don't talk about the features of the product. They talk about the benefits those products bring. So in the same idea as we're talking about products and services, when you're presenting, let's say you could potentially be presenting at a conference at work at the end of the year, and you have to present your figures and your numbers. You can always relate that to a story. We started this year and we believe we were going to be the champions of the world. We were the best team in town. We were ready to get into the pitch and score 25 goals every time that we're going to start. Then COVID struck. and it ruined our plans. It's like our superstar broke their ankle. So you can relate situations, everyday life situations, with stories that can reach people and can connect with them a bit more. All right, so good stories entertain. Good stories are educational, they are universal, they're organized, and they are memorable. So good stories entertain our audience. They make them want to know more. Good stories are educational. They leave some sort of kind of thingy at the end that either gives us some sort of new knowledge or it makes us aware of something new. They're universal. A good story, it's a great story anywhere around the world, not just here in Sydney where I'm now, but anywhere, wherever you guys are around the world. That is a great story. They're organized, and I'm going to jump into this again, but they have a structure. This is not rocket science, but there is a formula, and they're memorable. As soon as people walk, out of wherever you are delivering that story, they remember it. They go back home, they talk about it. So storytelling is not adding a personal story at the beginning of your 60-minute just finance presentation. It's not your sales target, and storytelling is definitely not boring. Okay. So now, 6 steps to master storytelling. Key takeaway: know your audience, define the objective, choose a personal story or a hook, have a clear structure and script, design a clear visual support, and work on the speaker's skills. Pretty simple. Again, not rocket science, but there is a formula. Let's go into the first one. Know your audience. Designing a presentation without an audience is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. I can't really tell you how important it is to understand who your audience is. I already gave you a little bit of a hint, but who's out there? What are they looking for? What are they expecting? The audience is the real hero of the story. Without an audience, your story is just a thought. You don't say, I was telling a story, or, oh, here's a story, if it's only you. You say it because there's an audience. There's someone else out there listening to you. If not, it's just you thinking. So when you think about who is the hero of this story, or who's the hero of this presentation, is always who's listening, not you. I was listening to an incredible podcast the other day, and they were talking about storytelling, and they were saying, you are, if someone's related to Star Wars, the storyteller is Yoda. You are the means for the audience to realize something. And the audience is Luke Skywalker. The audience is the real hero of the story, because you are looking to transform them. You are looking to tell them something that's going to change the way they perceive one thing or another. Again, it could be a sales pitch. It could be a very interesting concept that you've learned. It could be a product. You're asking them to join you in your journey of success. So if I'm pitching for a new product, let's say I'm pitching for Instagram, and I'm trying to get investors to jump in my project, I'm asking them, look, you guys are the heroes, because you are the ones that are going to put the money down. You're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to help us transform the world. I'm just going to give you the means to do that. I'm going to give you this great idea. So key takeaway, again, 2 key takeaways in a row, but the audience is the real hero of the story. If your audience is too broad, sometimes you're presenting to a huge audience, because maybe you're doing an online Zoom like you guys. I don't really even know who's out there today, but I'm assuming, and this is the way that I built up this webinar, I'm assuming there's a certain level of knowledge, and there's probably a certain level of maybe disbelief or unrelatedness to this topic. So think about who you want to impact. When you have an incredible broad audience, especially when you think about a TED event, there's an incredible kind of size and completely different audience. You have experts, you have people that have absolutely no idea of what you're going to talk. Who do you want to impact? That's up to you. That's up to you, the speaker. Okay. So who's listening? Is it millennials? Is it baby boomers? Experts or amateurs? Do you need to come across more professional, or will a friendly tone work? Do you know the audience, or are they strangers? Have they been sitting down for hours? I'm assuming everyone that's here, it's 6:21 p.m. I'm assuming that everyone had a really long day at work. So I'm trying, and one of the things that I'm putting in is to try and make sure that you're all engaged in what I'm saying, that you're all listening, because it's probably been a long day, and you probably have a very little span of attention now. So that's why you'll see me change tone, maybe do a little pause, repeat. It always works. Because I try to understand, or again, at least I decided who this event and this webinar was for. So do the same thing. Whenever you're preparing something, try to understand who's listening. Empathy is the key. Putting yourself on the other's shoes. So point number one, super important, very clear, understand who's your audience. Biggest mistake, not thinking about who's on the other side. Number two, I'm probably, and I'm not going to say this is on order of importance, but this is also extreme. The 6 things are very important, but this is extremely important. Define the objective. What do you want the audience to think, feel, know, learn, or do? What do you want them to take home? What is the objective of this presentation? Either a TED Talk, if you're pitching your business idea, your product. What do you want your audience to take home? Is it for them to go back home and buy it? Is it for them to go back home and maybe change a habit that they have? Usually that's what TED Talks do. They want to appeal to some sort of feeling that then maybe you'll go back home and you'll change some sort of habit. So one key idea, think about one key takeaway. I have a few key takeaways today, but think about one. And I'm going to tell you at the end which is my one key takeaway. And you can point that out. You can tell your audience, hey, listen, this is what I want you to take home. This is the most important thing. You don't necessarily have to do it, but you can. Because when you say it, you're also giving it the importance that it has. But as a former boss that I had many years ago told me, there's many ways to skin the cat. So you get to choose your own adventure, and you get to choose your own way of transmitting an idea. But do have that key takeaway. What do you want your audience to take home? So I have 2 pictures here. Maybe a lot of you were very young. Maybe a lot of you have no idea about what this is, but this is the day that Steve Jobs presented the first MacBook Air. He did a long presentation. He talked about the product and how Apple is always revolutionizing things and so on. I have an incredible video that I can send to you guys. You can always also look for this in YouTube, but I thought that the image itself was going to be kind of strong enough. The last thing he did before he presented the computer, he took it from an office envelope. We're talking about, this was more than 10 years ago. Now we give for granted that computers are this size, but back then the computers were bulky. They were thick, and this guy pulled the computer from an envelope. Something that no one ever in the history of mankind had ever thought of was happening there. So he didn't ramble about how fast it was and how much RAM it had and the storage. And he said, we are building the most incredible, light, effective computer there is, and portable. And then he did, and he took it from that brown sleeve that he had there. That's it. That was the key idea. That was the key objective. People were going to go back home after seeing that, and they were going to tell their spouses, their children, their friends, hey, the guy took the computer from an envelope. That's how small it is. It doesn't matter if it's an inch thick or 2 centimeters thick or 1 centimeter thick. What was important is that visually that idea was there. On a TED Talk, and maybe you've seen this TED Talk, this is Jamie Oliver when he was very young. He was talking about how much sugar there was on milk in the US. And basically, he just brought in a wheelbarrow of sugar and threw it on stage and said, this is how much sugar a 5-year-old has consumed only from milk in the first 5 years of his life. Again, that's the key takeaway. Then he rambles for like another 20. This is, I think, one of the longest TED Talks there is. Even before there was that 18-minute limit, I think it's 21 or 22 minutes. And he then goes to a lot of things that could be changed. But in everyone that was there in the audience and everyone that sees it today, this is what gets stuck in their mind. The idea that there's too much sugar in milk, and this is how much sugar our children are having. So that's what's called the star of your talk or your presentation, where you're going to reach a point, the high point, and maybe it's literally the first second. But be clear on what you want that key takeaway to be, that one idea. Especially if someone's out there and they're thinking about presenting their business, their products, their services, don't rumble around the features. Nobody cares about the features. People care about solving their problems. Talk about the benefits. Talk about what are the benefits your product or service is bringing to market. Okay, so again, I'm touching two things. I'm touching kind of stories and I'm touching products and services. So do you want them to take hope home? Do you want to make them fearful? To get back home being excited, to bring a new concept or maybe to do some sort of an objective when they come home? What do you want them to do? What's that key idea and that key takeaway that you want to make them take home? Questions so far? I'm gonna ask if there's a question. We have quite a few people around. No questions. No questions. Good. Number 3, choose a personal story or a hook. So we said storytelling is important because stories are more compelling than businesses. So stories bring people together. That is something that we've seen again for centuries. People would get around fireplaces and tell stories and connect. Stories inspire and motivate. I don't know, probably a lot of you have read books and that inspired you to do one thing or another. Stories create change. It's not the same to sell a product than to tell a story of why that product changed your life forever or changed you forever. Okay, so think about products or services that you use and how they have changed you. And then how would you sell that to a friend, a family member, or someone that you know? I don't know, think about Spotify. It's not the same to say, I'm making this as I go, but it's not the same to say, look, there's this app that you basically pay $9 or $10 a month or $12 a month, and you have unlimited music, than to say, imagine having the ability to travel around the world with no CDs, with no DVDs, with no cassettes, with no limited MP3s of 25, 30 gigabytes. Imagine having access to all of the music in the world. Imagine being able to be in that romantic dinner with the one you love and having that song that you just thought of that would be perfect and playing it. That's Spotify. Music everywhere for everyone. Again, I just came up with that. Maybe it's not the best example, but this idea that that's how you can tell a story. So the perfect story could have been, I was with the one that I loved, and Spotify gave me the opportunity to play that perfect song to ask her, him, them to marry me. That is a compelling story. That engages people. So it kind of a trick, a TED trick, or not the best, or not the nicest example, but you see a lot of people starting conversations or TED Talks or presentations saying something like, when I was 9, I lost my parents in a car accident. That made me spend the rest of my life making sure that nobody else would lose their beloved ones on a car accident. And that's why I invented this or that product. You connected with a story, you tell them why you are invested into this idea, and then you present the product or service. Or that is a personal story. Or you can say something like, if it's a hook, what we call a hook, which is something that's going to attract people to listen to you very fast. By the end of this presentation, 10 people would have lost their lives on a car accident. Oh, you got me. What do you mean? And that's why I've invested my life into creating this sensor that makes that makes sure that when somebody is falling asleep while driving, it buzzes and it wakes you up. So having a personal story or having a hook creates engagement, creates a bond between you and your audience. It creates the concept of, why should I be listening to you? Oh, because you gave me an incredible stat, or because you suffered from this. So when you talk about a product or a service, if you're pitching a product or a service, you will need to find that. You will need to make sure you're explaining to the world what was the problem that was bugging you so much. If you're presenting on a TED conference, or if you're presenting again to your work colleagues about your numbers at the end of the year, it's the same as we were saying before. How can you say, or how can you use analogies or metaphors or some sort of hook to connect and to make sure that they listen to you? What will your audience experience when you tell that story? It's way better not to have a story than to have a story that is not effective. So think about, what is that emotion that you want your audience to experience? If it's a product, what will your product create on your audience? So again, we were talking about this potential, I don't know, it could be a watch that buzzes when you are falling asleep while driving. So that will create the feeling of, I don't know, being secure, being safe. Remember that great stories appeal to our deepest emotions. When you say that your parents had a car accident and they passed away because someone was sleeping, or someone fell asleep while driving, that is very relatable. People can relate to that because maybe they haven't experienced that personally, but they know, but they probably have had that fear. Not everyone has such a cool story, such a great story to tell, but probably if you are presenting something in front of someone, it's because you have a story that can be relatable to them. So we talked about understanding the audience. We talked about having one key objective. We talked about being clear on what's going to be your personal story or the hook that's going to engage your audience and feel emotionally connected. The fourth is a structure and a script. The structure and the script is, and this is also one of the biggest mistakes that I see people do, which is they just write things down. It could be an essay, it could be a presentation, it could be something, without having a clear structure of what they want to achieve. So once we have that key objective, we can create a skeleton of how we're going to achieve that objective. So remember that we're not enumerating facts, that we're not talking about features, we're telling a story. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this, and it's showing you potentially a chart that you can use. When you're telling a good story, usually there's some sort of vertical takeoff. Again, I've told the story about imaginary story that didn't happen to me. How I lost my parents when I was 9 on a car accident. That is a huge vertical takeoff. And then I had some sort of challenge, which was I grew up with my grandpas, and that was extremely hard for me, for him, from an economic perspective, but also he was older, and it was not the same. And I saw my friends playing with their parents, and then we reach a climax. And then I had to experience this idea that my grandfather passed away. Or then I also saw in the news that somebody else had lost their parents on a car accident. So I decided to invest the rest of my life in creating this product that was going to change the way that we are safe when driving on the highway. And this is what I have to do. This is your key takeaway. Buy my product. This is one way of seeing things. And this is a perfect structure. Again, this can last, every single thing of this structure can last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you want it to last. But it's this idea of something happened to me, I had a challenge, there's a climax, then some sort of potential, as it says there, many possible outcomes. Then we answer those questions. How are we going to prevent this from happening again? And these are the key learnings and takeaways. Or we can use what's called the hero journey. And if any of you have ever seen a Disney movie or a Pixar movie, this is the way every single movie goes. There's some sort of, let's think about Kung Fu Panda, for example. Kung Fu Panda was living in this village with his dad, and they were making noodles and everything was great. Suddenly there's a huge threat, and the town it faces adversity, and apparently Mr. Panda is the only one that can solve this. So there's a call to adventure. In the beginning, he doesn't want to go. He's happy. He loves his life. He loves being close to his dad. But then he meets the mentor. He meets the squeaky little, I don't know, rat that is going to train him, that tells him that he's the only one. He's the only one that can do it. So they go to the special world. They start a travel where they go to train to the mountains, and now he is the one. He needs to be the one that's going to solve that problem. He gets to know who are going to be their allies and their enemies. And then he approaches that first battle with that enemy, and he doesn't make it. He fails. Everything's really bad. Everything's really is horrible. I'm not really going to do this. I don't want to come back. Sorry. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to come back. But now I realize that I can. I don't want to go home. I really want to make this happen. And I beat the guy. So to go back home, I have to solve this problem. I've kind of fought the bad guy. I won, and now I'm the master of the two worlds. The one that caused me the trouble, the one that I learned from, and my own. And I return back home being a little bit better, and then we start over. And then you have Kung Fu Panda 2, and it follows the same structure. So you can apply this to anything: Toy Story, The Lion King, Finding Nemo, etc., 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 etc. So having a structure to your story, and you can use this one. You don't need to come up with new structures. The hero journey is a fantastic structure to tell a story. This is going to build up your confidence, knowing that you're using, again, not rocket science, but a formula to reach your audience. Before working on the content, work on your skeleton. Think about the audience's journey. What do you want your audience to do? What do you want your audience to experience? You have the beginning, whatever's going to go in the middle, and then be sure that you have an end. Something that I see a lot, that I've seen a lot with my students, with my mentees, even with TEDx speakers, is that they don't know how to wrap it up. Usually there's this idea of when we start a narrative, we end up at the same place. Again, we go to the hero's journey, we start with a narrative, and we end up in the same place somehow. So think about how you can connect the beginning, that personal story, if you're going to use a personal story in the beginning, with the final part of it. Good things, when short, are twice as good. This is saying from Anna. Who's Anna? That's my mom. And this is something that I grew up with. If you can say the same thing in half the time, do so. Literally last week, we with Paula, we were judges on a competition on a pitching competition. I think actually Chiara was here, and she and everyone was taking. They had 10 minutes, and everyone was taking 8 minutes to start, and then they were rushing through the end, and in the end they were taking 12 minutes because they think that they have a lot, and there was no need. There's no need to use as much time as you can. Remember that one of the biggest myths in the history of world is that people don't have enough time. People have enough time. What they don't have enough is attention. We're fighting for people's attention. So the longer you go, the least of their attention you're gonna get. It's very important to understand this concept of a very short span of attention, making as much impact as we can in the least possible amount of time. Number 5, designing a clear visual support. This is not for everyone. This is not for everything. This is not for every presentation, but this is very important. Whatever you're saying needs to be different from whatever the people are seeing. Again, here I'm presenting to you, but now you're going to see it exactly the way that I'm going to be doing it. But when you're presenting, it could be, again, the end of the year with your colleagues, or it could be a TED Talk, or it could be you're pitching for a product. What you're saying needs to be different from what's out there. Why? Because people get distracted and they don't listen to you when they're reading. So 10 tips to do a really good visual support. 1 idea per slide. Don't chunk 120 different ideas in one slide. 1 idea per slide. Tip 2, clean backgrounds. As you see here, everything white, a few little thingies that make our branding very clear. Definitely you don't want something like this. Tip 3, few elements, like the one that we have here. Obviously, this is a bit too much. I don't think anyone's going to do this in 2020. But this is too much. You can't read, you can't see, you can't do anything. Don't pack it up with text. Illustrate. So as I was doing with the hero journey, and as we all know, 1 image is worth more than 1,000 words. So find that thing that illustrates what you're trying to say. Maybe it's one figure. Maybe it's 97% of people do this. So you only put the 97% on the screen, and then you say the rest. Big text, at least 30 pixels. If you're using something that's smaller than 30 pixels, then you're not seeing anything. Something that Mr. Guy Kawasaki says a lot is you need to understand who's the eldest person in your room, divide that person's age by 2, and that has to be the minimum size of the pixels that you have on your text. No, you never know who's going to be there. I'm assuming there's someone that's around 60 years old here. That's why I go with 30px for everything I do. No sound or animation. There's definitely no sound. And there's no need to put animations. When you change it from one pen drive to another, and if someone has Mac and someone else has Windows, and your computer breaks down, animations stop working, something can happen. So if you want to show 20 different things in a slide, or you want to do kind of sort of animations, multiply those slides. So instead of having 1 slide where things appear, have 20 slides where everything appears in an extra slide instead of animating that slide. Shocking images. Probably everyone remembers this image and this cover of the National Geographic. 1 or 2 typographies, no more. I tend to use only 1. You can use 2, but then it starts confusing the brain and people don't get to read or see anything. This is too many fonts, and this is bad, really bad. The color palette. Make sure that you have something that is nice to the eye, that people can rest on what they're seeing, and that it's not taking up the energy of whoever is watching on trying to get everything through their heads. And tip 10, the one that I love the most, keep it simple. I'm not gonna add that second S. If you went to school, you probably know what that last S means, but keep it simple. It's better to have very few things than everything very, very full. One of my favorite quotes from The Little Prince, or actually from the author of The Little Prince: perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but rather when there is nothing more to take away. And 6, And I'm going to ask if there's any questions so far. If somebody wants to interrupt me, I think we are perfect. We're greatly in time for what's coming up.
Can I ask you something?
Yes, Chiara, please.
I just missed, sorry. I just missed number 7 and number 8. I got distracted with the baby, but
you got distracted. I was fighting for your attention.
Just shocking image, yes.
Shocking images.
And
1 and 2
8?
typographies, 1 or 2 typographies.
Okay.
No
Done.
more. The color palette, and keep it simple. Thank you, Chiara.
All done.
Thank you. And number 6, and this is where most of your confidence will come from, and it's working on you, working on your skills. I'm going to share a few tips. Again, there's so much that I can teach and share and then discuss with you in an hour. But the most important thing to know here is that 93% of your communication is nonverbal. Nonverbal means that it doesn't mean that it doesn't come out from your mouth. It means that it's not the meaning that the words itself have. It's not the same to say, "Yay, that's great," to say, "That's great." I said the same thing, but it had 2 completely different meanings. So that 93% is in everything that I said or everything that I did, besides the "that's okay." Be genuine. Be genuine. Be yourself. Don't try to be someone that you're not. This is pretty obvious, but it makes sense. Don't memorize what you want to say. Understand. Know what are the steps. Know your structure. You don't have to have a perfect script word by word. You need to have cues that remind you where you're going next. Breathe. Sometimes we underestimate the power of breathing. Breathing brings us calmness, and it brings us also power in our voice. If we don't breathe, people can listen. I see this a lot on presentations when people are pitching to me. They get obviously they're nervous, but that's why it's important to prepare before you're starting a presentation. You can do this very simple trick, which is you cannot see much here because I have a background, but you put your index finger on your little finger and you breathe in, hold it, breathe out, and you do it again. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. That calms you down. So before you are about to start, before you're about to present, make sure that you're giving yourself some air to make sure that you deliver in the best and perfect way. Use different tones. This is very hard. A lot of people struggle. And it's most of the times it's because they don't really even think about using different tones. This is very important to keep someone engaged. Tones, volume. Look, I'm talking in a certain way now, and now I'm talking in a completely different way. And this generates attention. How many times have you had a teacher that is super monotone and goes like this, and everything that they say is in this tone, and that's all they do, and they don't really breathe, and in the end, it's impossible to understand what they're saying. So use different tones. That's fundamental. Use the power of the pause. Pauses also bring attention. They generate tension and drama, and they build up to something. They build up to something. And that brings me to the next one, which is repeating. When you repeat something, it gets fixed in someone's mind. When you repeat something, it gets fixed in someone's mind. And also it calls attention. If someone's distracted, they automatically look back at you. When you repeat something, it's like there's a call to see what's going on. Sorry, I just moved everything. Use face gestures, especially in the Zoom era, where you don't have all of your body, but you have a lot in your face. I know that using my glasses is not the best thing, but use your face gestures, use your eyebrows, use your mouth, use your nose. Definitely use your eyes. That also generates a lot of the communication that you're establishing with your audience. Use your hands, again, especially on Zoom. I have the ability to do this, and that also brings attention, and not only it's for what you're seeing, but it also gives me a different way of expressing my words. It's very different, or it's very hard to express when you're not moving around. When you're putting your movement in it, you also say it in a different way. Practice, practice, practice. And again, this is not rocket science, but there's there's a formula, and practice is everything. Some people have the gift of standing in front of an audience and doing miracles. Most of us mortals don't have that. We need to practice. We need to know that structure. We need to know what we're going to say. It is the key to success. That doesn't mean that you have to practice it for 20 weeks. Actually, my TED speakers, they only had the chance to practice their final talk for maybe 10 days, because it takes a lot of time to build it up. But once you have it ready, practice, 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 especially if you're pitching or you're preparing something important. Get involved, get passionate, love what you do. Feel that emotion. Emotion brings emotion. If you can feel the emotion yourself, you're probably going to make your audience feel that emotion too. And most importantly, enjoy. Probably the hardest part, probably this is the kind of the most difficult thing to share with you guys, and it's the idea of enjoy what you're doing. Because if you don't, then you're missing out on a beautiful thing. People listening to you, you're catching and you're taking people's attention. You're getting one of the most, if not their most valuable assets, again, attention. So enjoy it. Enjoy having the chance of having an audience listening to you. I'm really enjoying this. I would love to see your faces. That would make a huge difference for me, but I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. So if I could ask you guys to take one thing from today, that key takeaway, that double-sized key takeaway in a different color that I have there on the bottom right, is the power of your audience and what you want and what you need to create, the emotions that you need to create in your audience. You want your audience to understand what you're saying, to get excited about it, to want to know more, to remember what you do or what you've said, and to talk about it enthusiastically. This is for a business idea. This is for whatever sort of pitch you're doing. This will tell you if you are successful at pitching or not. The effect that you have on your audience. Remember, you are not the hero of your audience, of your story. You're not the hero. You're not Luke Skywalker. You're Yoda. You are the master. You are the mentor that's going to bring around change for your audience. Either, again, change is buying your product, change is investing in your product, change is if you're doing a TED conference to go back home and change a habit. You are Yoda. So this is pretty much it. This is just the introduction to mastering storytelling. Again, we don't have the world, we don't have time. 6:54. This is perfect timing. Learning how to pitch like a pro takes a little bit more time, and that's what we're doing for the next 4 weeks. So if you're interested on starting a journey on becoming a great storyteller and becoming great at pitching, talk to Annalise. She's around. Send us a message. Connect with us. We have Winning Pitch starting. We're going to be doing loads of fun activities. It's going to be great. But this is something that you need to practice, as I said before. By coming to one event, one webinar, there's not much that you can do. And if you decide not to join us, find a way to practice with someone else. Connect with someone. Create a group. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll open now the space for any Q&As for the last 5 minutes. And pretty much as this was timely, perfectly timed, I'm going to wrap it up here and I'm going to stop my share. All righty. I'm all yours for the next 5 minutes.
Hey, Lucas, here's a question from me.
Hey, Alex.
First of all, thank you so much. A really great presentation. And I always like attending your webinars because I always learn something really, really good and get inspired.
Thank you, Alex.
one very important key takeaway for me is the highlight you talked about in our presentation. So I was wondering, what's your opinion on when would be the best timing to kind of point out the highlight? Would it be the beginning where you actually get the attention and then you move on, or maybe in the end when you actually kind of reinforce the impression which leaves people to go home with?
That is a fantastic question, Alex. And I don't want to disappoint you, but the answer is it depends. It depends on, again, how long is your talk? Why would you give out your star moment in the beginning, or is there any way that you can keep it till the end? And again, I could see it, and I'm going to talk now, especially from the last TED event that I did. With some speakers, it was kind of keeping them engaged to tell them that star moment at the end. And in the end, this is what happened. So we told the beginning of a story, then we jumped into our learnings and everything, and then at the end it was, oh, by the way, that story that I started here, it ended up here somewhere else. Sometimes you want to go straight up. Again, the star, if you go and see, and I really encourage you to see that the TED talk of Jamie Oliver, the wheelbarrow is at, I think, maybe 1.5 minutes after he starts, and then he has another 20 minutes to go. But then obviously in his case, it was so visual that it stayed there for the rest of the presentation. So even though people were listening, they were still seeing that star moment lying in the back. So I definitely think it will depend on what are you presenting, on how you're presenting it, and what's the end of the kind of the final objective. I think it's always interesting to, when you're preparing to kind of deliver a certain pitch or to tell a story, to kind of get somebody to help you out, a mentor, a friend, a coach, somebody that can help you think about that time. And again, thinking about your audience and when will your audience be mostly engaged, and maybe again that hook or that star moment will keep them engaged for longer. So maybe it might be interesting to do it at the beginning, but again, there's no formula.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Anyone else that wants to bring about questions, a thought, a comment? No, thank you. I don't know if you're trying to talk, Chiara, but I think you're muted. There you go. No, you are still muted, which is weird. Still can't hear you. No. Well, in the meantime, okay. Anyone else? 6:59. If not, we'll just leave it here. Make sure, guys, you connect with us, with the Academy, that you connect with me as well. Always a pleasure to be in touch. Thanks, Therese, for the clap. And I think then, without further ado, again, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a lovely Wednesday night and an incredible rest of the week. And oh, maybe we have a question here. Therese, question, or you just wanted to say hi? No.
I just wanted to say hi and thank you, and how we may get more details about the upcoming sessions.
Awesome. So Therese, if you can, I'm gonna give you marketing@astudy.com. I thought Annalise was still here, but I think she probably had to leave. I'm leaving there the email. You can also contact me, or else I can tell Annalise to reach out to you. Probably your details are and the login.
Okay. Yes, please. I'll just send an email there. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Guys, thank you. Have a lovely night. See you soon, and stay in touch.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you.